Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Good. Designing and maintenance, for maintenance and circularity. Thank you for a lovely introduction. How's that? Is that better? Okay. I am Dominique. I work with a very small team leading the transformation of the total IKEA into a circular business. I work in Älmhult, Sweden. It is the headquarters, the design headquarters of IKEA. IKEA itself is a rather large company. We operate in over 50 markets. We have 350,000 coworkers. Our range offer is 9,500 articles, approximately. And we have a goal of reaching 3 billion people by 2030. So our impact is actually quite big. And so the things that we are going to do with our business will have a big impact on many people and the planet. So now I'm going to take a little bit of time to explain to you how we are going to develop our business and reach our ambition that Ingvar Kamprad, our founder, set for us in the 1940s. And his vision is to reach the many more people and make their life better. So we want to do that, but within the means of one planet. So why are we going circular? And of course, if you think about the fact that we produce 9,500 articles, that requires resources. And resources are scarce. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It is something that's happening to us today. And we know that as resources become more and more scarce, they will become more expensive, and that is going to affect our business. So we have to already now, today, start to find ways to be able to mitigate that in the future. Based on studies, we know that there will be a shortage of 80 billion tons of natural resources globally by 2050. That's a really, really big number. So for IKEA to participate in that, we have to really make some tough decisions already today. We also know that there is a changing customer behavior out there. Can you see the, yeah, good. Because we talk to our customers a lot, and because we really want to understand how they live. What do they do with the things that they have at home? What are their daily habits? What do they wish for? What do they long for? What do they need? And what we see is that there is a movement globally, for those of you who follow megatrends, that people are moving into the cities. Moving into the cities means smaller spaces, meaning less money that you can spend on things, and that affects your relationship with the things that you do have. And on top of that, the accessibility that has been created through technology now makes instant gratification much more something that people want now. You know, I can go and scroll on something today, and within a day, have it delivered from Amazon without a problem. And that has an impact on the relationship that a company like IKEA has with their customers. So based on the conversation that we have had with our customers, we see that there's 5 things that are really important to them. First one is value. The way that people perceive value is changing. If you're going to move into a smaller space and you have less money to spend on things, the things that you have will be more valuable to you. You will care for them longer. The other side of that is also something that we, I think, all can relate to but don't talk about very much, and that is emotional connection. There are things that each one of you owns that have no value because they remind you of something, they remind you of an experience of someone you love, and those are the things that you will cherish and protect at all costs. We have stories of people who, there's a funny story of a man who has a lamp that he had as a baby, and that's the lamp that his mom turned on when he was reading a story. And this lamp is a piece of junk. And he spent 250 euros to get it rewired because of that emotional connection to the storytelling with his mom. So the decisions that people make around value are very much affected by that. The second one is affordability. For IKEA, low price is absolutely essential because that is the way that we're going to reach the many people. And therefore, affordability becomes a big topic that we talk about within our company. But if we peg that against the rising cost of resources, all of a sudden affordability becomes threatened. We also need to acknowledge the fact that today, in today's society, people value experiences more, meaning that the money that they spend on things is less. So how do we entice them to be able to buy products to solve their needs and make their spaces beautiful and represent them? Wastefulness. I want all of you to think about the space that you live and how many of you have a closet or a basement or an attic full of stuff that you don't use, that, like you got a gift and it wasn't quite right, or it's just too good to throw out. I think we can all relate to that feeling. And when we talk to all of our customers, doesn't matter where they are in the world, doesn't matter how much money they do or do not have, nobody wants to be wasteful. I think we can all relate with that feeling of not wanting to throw out something that we think still has value. So this becomes a great opportunity for a change in behavior for customers so that we can connect to this feeling of not wanting to be wasteful. Convenience. I think Adriana talked a little bit about the concept of convenience. And convenience is actually one of the key factors that will make a difference in whether customers adopt a more sustainable behavior or not. Because of the advancement in technology and because of this instant gratification, if I have a sofa that is still pretty good, but it means that I have to pick it up myself, and I live as a single person, drag it down the 3 flights of my tiny, tiny apartment, and then somehow figure out how to get it somewhere so that it maybe can have a life, I'm not going to do that because it's too hard. I don't have time for it, I can't lift it, it's too hard. So for a company like IKEA, we have to solve the question of convenience in order for our customers to adopt a more sustainable consumption pattern. And the last one is citizenship. We want to be good citizens of the planet. We want to leave a better world for our children that we got from our parents. So that is also something that we have to connect to. So what is Circular for IKEA? I have a little film to inspire you. Sound? Please?
What do we see?
You know what? I'm going to start it from the beginning because it's just so good.
If we take a look around at how we live today, what do we see? Well, we see a world of rapid climate change, dwindling resources, and unsustainable consumption. A linear world where raw materials are turned into products that are eventually turned into waste. What a waste. What if there was a better way? We've talked to people all around the world, and we know for a fact that nobody really wants to be wasteful. But the world today is not set up to make a new, resourceful way of living easy. IKEA wants to change that. What if new things could be made from old things? Then products wouldn't just be products. They would be resources, material banks for the future. But before we can even think about doing that, so much more needs to happen. Like designing products so that we can easily repair, renew, or upgrade them, and making sure it's easy for every single piece to be repurposed or remanufactured, and then, at the very end, recycled. Things would last so much longer, and we could all play our part by reselling or passing them on, moving us closer to a world without waste. We need a new mindset, a new way to make products live multiple lives. At IKEA, we're committed to transforming our complete business to become circular so that we can make it easier for people to live better and more sustainable lives with the products we make, until one day they are needed somewhere else by someone else as something else entirely.
Quite inspirational, isn't it? It certainly gives me energy. So what does it mean in real terms in how we actually develop the business? Let's start with where we are today. Today we are very good at running a linear business, and we have been doing this for 75 years, and we have found a tremendous amount of efficiencies in a linear business. We sell furniture in flat packages so that it can be transported so we don't ship air, so that we use the best materials possible. And that is a way of eliminating waste out of a linear value chain. And as IKEA, we have the benefit of owning our total value chain. So we actually are sourcing materials that we use. We then manufacture them into parts. We then assemble them into flat package products. We distribute them. Our customers buy them. And unfortunately, in this model that we operate today, we seldom know what happens to the product after the customer has bought it. Sometimes they get passed on. Sometimes they go into the garbage. But what happens is that we actually lose control of that really valuable resource that we have put out into the world. And we know that the landfill is unfortunately part of that equation. So when we adopt the circular business model, that changes. And for those of you who are really paying attention, you will find that there's something completely missing from this model. And that's the landfill. Because the landfill is where you waste resources, because it becomes nothing. So we can't afford to let go of that. So in the new model, we actually spend much more time in the first loop, which is the reuse. Because this is the place where we can not only just sell something to our customer, but we can extend the relationship with our customer and support them in maintaining the things that they love. Meaning that it's not about a new product, it's about a product that can be repaired multiple times, that can be returned when somebody no longer wants it, and that we can have a service relationship with our customers. Once that product cannot be repaired at home, we believe it moves into a refurbishment loop, and that is where we can provide services where products that are damaged and to some extent can simply be refurbished, meaning that a table like this doesn't just get thrown out, but maybe it gets polished out, maybe it gets reacquered, and it gets put out again to live yet another life, again and again and again. Once it cannot be refurbished anymore, it moves into the remanufacturing loop. So look at the chairs that you have today, that you're sitting on today. So in a normal linear economy, those chairs would be separated, the different parts would be sent into recycling, and then they would become something else. In the remanufacture loop, actually, those are elements that we can use to make other things. So those chairs that you have today, what we would do is we would separate them, we would take away the comfort materials that we cannot use because they haven't used up, and that gets recycled, but the shell of the chair can become another chair. The legs can be repainted, and they can become a table. Meaning that all of a sudden the idea of taking up materials and to have them live multiple lives becomes really viable, and it really takes us away from having to rely on those natural resources. And then when we have done that as many times as possible, only then do we send things into recycling. Because in recycling, we essentially degrade the value of the material, and that is not desirable. So engaging with customers in new ways is what we have to do in order for us to enable the possibility for the first two loops to really function, reuse and refurbishment. And the way that we want to address that is that we will look at how customers acquire products. Today they come to the big blue box and they buy something, they put it into their cart, and then they drive it home. As you may have heard, if you follow what IKEA is doing, we are opening some new store formats in the city centers where it's much easier for customers to just walk in, maybe plan their kitchen, maybe pick up some small products, arrange for delivery. But in the reuse model, there's another opportunity there as well, because it's not just about the new products. What if we were to facilitate an exchange of products that you no longer want? So you have an IKEA chair, it doesn't fit your style anymore, but so you want to pass it on, and IKEA can step in and help you pass it on to someone else. Or take it back if it is broken, repair it, and then pass it on to someone else. You may have also heard, if you're sitting in Europe, that we are going to trial leasing programs now in many markets, because that is one way of this ownership. So you can borrow a product for some time, use it for as long as you need it, and when you no longer need it, you bring it back to IKEA, and then we make sure that it can live many, many times, meaning that it no longer becomes a single-use product. Care for. Today, our customers are more or less left on their own. We do sell spare parts, but we need to take it to the next level. How do we make sure that things can be relacquered, polished, bits can be replaced? How do we make sure that products change with life? You know, people move into your household. You get a boyfriend, you get a girlfriend, babies come, children move out. Products need to be able to live, especially if you love them. So we need to design them so that they can be cared for, they can be repaired, upgraded, and adapted to the changing life. And the way that we do that is by designing them differently, and I will tell you about that in a minute. And then essentially passing on afterwards, which is really completing the loop on how people acquire. The person who doesn't want things here anymore can then pass on the product when they no longer need it. Adriana talked a little bit about design principles, and we have our own take on that, and essentially it is driven by the fact that everything that we design will be designed to reuse, repurpose, repair, and recycle. So from the very beginning, we have to think about what are the possibilities for each product to fit from through those loops. And I actually have a very interesting example of that, because we have been thinking about this for quite some time. And about a year, maybe 2 years ago, we had a team who was really, really excited about this, and they developed a lamp. And they developed this lamp was beautiful. It was made out of metal and out of wood. And they said, yeah, this is really great because we made it so that it can be separated, and then you can take it to the recycling plant, and then all the bits and pieces can go into the right material fractions, and it gets recycled. And we were so proud. And we went to a recycling company, and we said, look at our awesome recyclable lamp. And the recycling company said, A, for effort, but unfortunately, the cord that is built into the lamp now has to be cut off manually by a person. And we don't have those kinds of resources. In addition, the base that you have used to stabilize the lamp is exactly the size that will damage the shredding elements in our shredding machines. Which means that we tried, but we failed. And that is probably the biggest lesson that we are learning on our journey today, is that we have to keep trying and thinking new, and also talking to others so we can understand how all the processes work, so we can really truly design to be able to fulfill this criteria. Products are material banks for the future. When we think about this concept of resources and then every single product becoming a resource, essentially we no longer see them as a product. We actually see them as something that will live multiple lives, meaning that the materials that we use in the products that we develop have to really be thought through, and you're no longer thinking about just the first single use, but you're thinking about the possible lifetimes that these products could have. So going back to the chair, as the example that I showed, today it's going to be a chair, and it's going to be a chair for maybe 2 or 3 families. But in the future, those metal legs can become a plant stand, can become a table, can become something else. And this is the kind of thinking that we have to take into our furniture design. Eliminating waste and smarter use of resources. This really comes down to choosing the right materials for the right products. The most famous example that we give, and some people in my company don't like me using this example, but I think it's so brilliant. How many of you have ever inherited a toilet brush? Do you plan a toilet brush? Do you plan to leave it as an inheritance for someone? No, so why the heck do we make it out of a material that lasts forever? We know that typically a toilet brush is used for approximately 6 months to a year by average customer. So one of the biggest challenges that we are now putting back to our designers is, how do you make a toilet brush that lasts 6 months to a year? And that's the kind of thinking that we have to take into every single product that we develop. Because if we don't do that, then we will be wasting resources and not using them smartly. Prolonging the life of products and materials. And one thing is about maintenance. One thing is about making sure that we can, repolish a tabletop. But another is about making sure that the materials that we use are actually responsibly sourced, and that they can last the right amount of time. The plastic is a perfect example because it is a fantastic material that is very good to use for certain uses, but maybe not for others. And using certain materials can be easier to maintain than others. For example, we have one of the challenges that we have is using comfort materials. When we use foam, for example, we know that foam lasts a really long time, and it's very hard to recycle that foam and make it into something else. So here is where we are looking at innovations. How do we develop a new generation of foam that can be easily recycled into something that's just as good? So that, for example, we can make truly recycled mattresses. Side story, totally not related, but a mattress story as well. Pointing to an interesting change in customer behavior. People don't want to buy used mattresses. Would you buy a used mattress? Yeah, you would, because you're tuned in, but many people don't, which is really interesting because we have no problem sleeping in hotels. So think about that, which is essentially a used mattress, right? So I think here is an interesting way to challenge perceptions and thoughts that customers have around potential reuse and the second life of products. So in order to accomplish all of this, we have actually set out 4 commitments, because our goal is that we will be a fully circular business by 2030. And how are we going to do it? Enabling customers to acquire, care for, and pass on products in circular ways, which I have talked about. Developing 100% circular products by 2030, meaning that every single product Every single one of the items out of this range of 9,500 products will have circular capabilities and be able to go through the loops as I described them. Using only renewable or recycled materials, taking responsibility for what kind of materials we source and how we use them. And the last one, which I didn't talk about very much, but is actually one of the critical contributors to our transformation, is taking the lead and joining forces with others. Like the lamp example, there are things that we don't know. We have a pretty good knowledge base because we are a large company, but we also have a very humble understanding that there are things that we don't know how to do, and there are things that we will not go into as a business. So taking partnership with those people who do know, who are the experts, who understand what the recycling machine looks like, who understand what the laws and standards are and how to apply them to certain innovations, becomes absolutely critical for us to be able to accomplish this. And by taking the lead, we also believe that with our scale, we can actually take the lead in setting up the future for other businesses. So we have drafted an approach for how we do this, and we do it in 3 ways. One is advocacy, meaning that we actually invest in spending time with agencies and governments who will set the preconditions for a circular economy in the future. Collaborations, meaning that we connect with other like-minded companies and NGOs who will help us advance the agenda together. And business partnerships. We're not going to recycle, so let's partnership with waste management companies who will help us not only source the material that we need, but also recycle it when we no longer need it. So essentially, this is, I hope that gives you an understanding of what it means to turn a whole entire business around and turn it into a circular one. It's exciting. It's terrifying because we know it's a huge, huge job ahead, and we know that there are questions that we have not yet even understood to ask, but we are very excited about this, and being here is one way to kind of get inspiration and to understand how do people perceive the concept of maintenance, how do they value products, how do they value materials, how does a city live? Having that understanding will go a really long way in getting us to achieve this vision. Thank you.